Welcome everyone to our meeting of the Planning and Development Committee for February 11th. All members of the committee are present today. Members of council, member committee, there are a few agenda changes identified on the package in front of you. Oh, there are no, I will ask, so there is no packages, but I will ask, there are changes, and I'll ask the city clerk for today's agenda since its publication.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is one of the few meetings where there is no supplementary business in front of council, in front of committee. But I do wish to point out item 6.1 on today's agenda, which is a presentation from staff on the use of the development permit system in the downtown core as a tool to implement a planning vision and help expedite development. That presentation is not complete and not ready, and so staff have requested that that item be removed from the agenda, and staff will be presenting, making that presentation at a future meeting. And the only other change to the agenda is the notation on item 17. The next meeting of the committee after tonight's meeting will not be held on February 25th. That meeting's been canceled. Instead, the next meeting will be held on March 4th at 7 p.m. And those are the changes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. Are there any additions or changes or deletions on the agenda? Councillor Palashi?
Why not? Let's take everything else off the agenda. So I'd like to talk about agendas at planning meetings. That's what I'd like to talk about. If we can add that as an item, Mr. Chair?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, that would be proposed item 9.1 under new business.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So with no further changes, may I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting? Moved by Councillor Palashi. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered in today's agenda? Nope. So we go on to the consent agenda. So there's nothing in consent. May I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting? Moved by Councillor Williams. All in favor? Carried. So just as a reminder, do we have that thing that talks about the statutory public meeting that we put up? So just for a reminder to everyone in the audience today, that this is a public meeting of the Planning Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at this public meeting are the result of applications made under the Planning Act. These are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. This evening, we do have one proposal, item 4.2, that is a city-initiated proposal. The intent of this public meeting is to hear submissions from the applicant and public regarding these proposals. Members of the committee may ask questions for clarification, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. The city also has posted on its website, www.brampton.ca, supporting information and documentation for all these current development applications for public review and reference. We will now proceed to consider the item on this evening's statutory public meeting agenda. Our first item is item 4.1. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from city staff regarding this proposal? They can come forward and provide public input on this item. Okay, and the item is an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit 186 residential units, retail and commercial uses within a 20-story building. Location 7800 and 7890 Hurontario Street, listed here as Ward 4. No. Okay. So let the record show no one attending the statutory public meeting requested a staff presentation or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant or representative wish to make a submission to the committee on the proposal? Okay. So let the record show the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
My mistake. I'd like to hear a presentation about the application.
Okay. For my committee, okay. So at this stage then, we will have city, please come and speak. Oh, I guess we have a lighting issue.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of committee, and the public. My name is Rob Nicky Fortune, and I am the city's development planner assigned to process the rezoning application in support of the proposed mixed-use development by G-Force Planners. The lands subject to this application are generally located on the west side of Hurontario Street, about 300 meters south of Steeles Avenue. More specifically, these lands are comprised of two properties, known municipally as 7800 and 7890 Hurontario Street, and within these buildings are restaurants, a convenience store, a gas station, automotive, and automotive repair facilities. The applicant's initial rezoning application proposed 186 apartment units along with ground floor retail and commercial uses within a 20-story building. To implement this change in land use, the applicant is requesting that the lands be rezoned to a site-specific Hurontario Corridor Mixed-Use 2 zone category. At this point in time, city planning staff have received the application, placed a notice in the Guardian newspaper advising that the application was deemed to be complete in accordance with the Planning Act, and have advanced the application to this public meeting to solicit comments from the interested parties. The public meeting notice has been provided to all property owners located within 240 meters of the site. Within the immediate area of the subject property is Brampton Fire Station number 206 to the south, a car wash facility to the west, and the associated driveway for the car wash to the north. Further to the north is an existing office and commercial development operated by the Buffalo Group. The above context plan shows key focal points in the area and has identified the future light rapid transit corridor that will be built along Hurontario Street and which will connect the Port Credit GO station at the south end of Mississauga north to Steeles Avenue in Brampton. The following aerial view of the property also helped to provide a better understanding of the current development that exists within the area. The information contained in the public notice is based on the applicant's original concept plan that was submitted back in September of 2018. Since then, we have received a revised concept plan which shows the lower section of the building podium being increased in height from 4 to 6 stories and which provides a slightly smaller podium footprint. Similarly, the footprint area for the tower portion of the building has also been slightly reduced in size to help reduce the building's appearance. In addition, the loading area has been moved further west, and the proposed connecting driveway has been moved from the northwest corner of the plan to the southwest corner of the plan. These revisions have resulted in 20 less apartment units on the property. The main reason for these changes were to improve the design and massing of the building, to provide an alternative driveway connection to the Lancashire Lane by way of the lands to the north and west and across the Buffalo Group's commercial development, as shown on the tertiary plan here. In addition, these changes were made to allow for some additional outdoor amenity space and landscaping. Here we have a perspective drawing of the proposed mixed-use development as originally submitted last year. And more recently, the applicant has provided a revised perspective drawing which shows the changes that were made to the podium and tower portions of the building. As part of the detailed land use policy review process, the proposed development will be evaluated for consistency with the provincial policy statement, conformity with the growth plan and the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and the region's official plan. Within the city's official plan, the site is designated residential. The proposal to develop the site for a mixed-use, high-density development is consistent with the policies of the city's official plan. As such, an amendment to this document is not required. Within the Hurontario Corridor Secondary Plan, the site is designated Mixed-Use 2. Policies within this designation encourage a mix of residential, office, commercial, institutional, and entertainment uses within a higher density development that supports the light rail transit that is planned along the Hurontario Street corridor. The proposed development will also need to conform with the secondary plan's requirements pertaining to height, density, and streetscape. Provided that these policies are addressed, an amendment to this document will not be required. Within the city's comprehensive zoning bylaw, the site is zoned with two site-specific highway commercial zone categories. An amendment to the zoning bylaw is required to rezone the site to allow for the proposed mixed-use apartment development. Now, based on the information that has been reviewed to date, 4 main development issues have been raised and will need to be addressed within the final recommendation report. First, we need to determine what scale and massing of development can be accommodated on the property to ensure that this development is properly integrated into the surrounding community. In this regard, the applicant has agreed to try and review other design options which would reduce the size of the ground floor podium and the size of the main tower component to allow for more on-site landscaping and amenity area. Second, the applicant is in the process of trying to upgrade their tertiary plan to demonstrate how interim and ultimate access and traffic movements can be coordinated with the adjacent lands to the north and west. Third, the applicant has been asked to try and incorporate bicycle lanes and on-street bicycle parking in accordance with the secondary plan policies. Fourth, additional information is still needed to understand the proposed residential and commercial condominium tenure of the building in order to ensure that the development can be properly serviced in accordance with the Ontario Building Code. Any potential development issues that are raised through the ongoing processing of this application will be addressed within the future planning recommendation report. Now, with the next steps, the purpose of the public meeting is to provide you, the public, with the the opportunity to comment on this proposal, and any comments received this evening will then be used in the preparation of a future recommendation report that will be forwarded back to the Planning and Development Services Committee. All members of the public that provide their contact information for this application will be advised when the future recommendation report will be presented. I am still in the process of collecting comments from this development application from both internal and external departments and agencies. So both the public meeting slides shown here tonight and the planning information report for this development application can be found online on the city's website. The final recommendation report will be posted online 1 week prior to the planning committee meeting. Should you have any questions or require further clarification on this project, you can contact either myself or the applicant's planning consultant, Mr. Manny Chauhan of G-Force Urban Planners, who's also here tonight to answer questions if you need. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much. Members of council, are there any questions? Councillor Bowman.
Go to the public first before I ask questions.
Okay, are there any members of the public who would like to come forth and provide any comments? No. Okay, so I'll open up to members of council. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question, and I don't know, Rob, if you can answer it, or if Alan, you want to take that. The FSI of 3.0, they're looking at an FSI between 3.6 and 4.0, and it says the reason is because they don't know whether they can include some aspects of their overall building's gross floor space. Is there not a one static description of FSI that you can't look at it and say this is gross and this is net? Is there not just one FSI?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, there is a overall understanding. The United States does it a little bit differently. They can exclude a few aspects of things, but we here look at a gross area of the entire building. We exclude nothing. We don't count the parking and below grade. So it is the overall floor space index of the entirety of the gross floor area divided by the property size, take off the road widening, I'd say, and we come up with about 3.9 approximately for this development. And that was based on the very first original submission. I think we brought it down a little closer through the refinements, maybe about 3.6 maybe, by thinning out the podium and the tower portions, and we're still ongoing to see what further work we can do with that.
Okay, but this is firmly understood now between the city of Brampton and the developer.
That's
The
correct.
FSI.
At one time, we believed there may have been an opportunity, this was closer to 7, but there was some clarification required. We've since addressed those concerns and questions.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Woolens.
Yeah, just quickly, and I'll leave it for staff to work with the applicant, but is there any way we can work to get that sustainable score a little higher than 72?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we'll continue to look at that, see what we can do, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woolens. No further questions. Can I get a motion to move staff report? Councillor Bowman, all those in favor? Carried. The statutory public meeting for this item is now adjourned. We move on to our next item, item 4.2. City-initiated amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw, Marysfield Neighborhood Character Review Study. Is anyone here this evening wishes to hear? And I think it's pretty safe to say that those do want to hear. So I'll hand it over to staff for presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee members, staff, and members of the public. My name is Michelle Gervais. I'm a policy planner with the city's Planning and Development Services Department. I am the policy planner responsible for handling the Marysfield Neighborhood Character Review Study. As the chairman has indicated, this is a city-initiated study. However, the city has hired SGL Planning and Design Inc. to complete the study, and tonight we have Ms. Catherine Jay, who is a representative of that firm, and I will be passing over the details of the presentation to her. I'll get through some of the housekeeping stuff as similar as Rob had made in his presentation. So the purpose of the public meeting tonight is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the draft amendments to both the official plan and zoning bylaw that will implement the findings of the Marysfield Neighborhood Character Review Study. The report associated with tonight's item on the agenda can be found online at www.brampton.ca on the meetings and agendas page. And the presentation from tonight will also be posted at the same location. And there is also a specific Marysfield Neighborhood Character Review webpage that the policy department has put together. A link to that was provided to some of the people that have been interested in this and can be shared with members that speak tonight as well. So public notice was provided both in the Brampton Guardian and also direct mail notice to all residents within 240 meters of the Marysfield neighborhood area. Ms. Catherine Jay will go through the details of what the study is, the purpose, the summary of the amendments, and also what the next steps are. But the next step relating to my work is the preparation of the final recommendation report. And when that report is forwarded, I will address the Planning Act tests, including consistency with the provincial policy statements, conformity with provincial policies, the Region Appeal official plan, the City of Brampton's official plan, and any public comments that we've received to date. We have already had 2 open house meetings in 2018, one in September and one in December. So the comments that we've received through those open houses, as well as what we hear tonight, will be included in the future recommendation report that we will be presenting at a later date to Planning Committee and Council. So as discussed, I will now turn it over to Catherine from SGL, and she'll provide an overview of the Marysfield Neighborhood Character Review Study, a summary of the proposed amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw, as well as touch on the next steps in the process. So thank you, committee members.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Michelle's done a good job of overviewing my presentation for you this evening. I have a quick outline, so I'll give you the context, the study purpose, the process where we're at, a summary of the feedback that staff and we have received, the recommendations, and the next steps. This is the context showing you the Marysville area, which is in the northeast corner of the Toronto Gore, which is the larger red area. And you may recall a couple of weeks ago, my colleague was here, Mr. Riley, to give you a presentation on the overall Toronto Gore policy review. And coming out of this was the need to do a little further dive on the Marysville neighborhood, and that's where this smaller review has conducted the character review and providing some policy recommendations. Just to give a brief history, this is a very unique area in the city of Brampton. It's the first cooperative housing in Ontario. It was affiliated with the St. Patrick's Church, and I imagine that most of you are familiar with the details of the history around this. And one of its distinct characteristics is the street pattern, which is designed after the Rosary. Some of the characteristics that we looked at were both in the public realm, so the streetscape, the landscape, and in the private realm. So the lot sizes, the development pattern, the street pattern, vegetation, the overall infrastructure, as well as the front yard depth, the orientation of the houses, the ground floor area, garage placement, and the separation between the dwellings. This just gives you an idea. Michelle already mentioned that there's been a couple of public open houses. There's been the background policy review, the formulation of the recommendations, which we have tonight, and we're here on this slide at the statutory public meeting. Just some overview of the feedback that we've heard through the process. I'm not going to go through all of it, but just to highlight for everyone that people really are interested in the distinct character. So 48% have said that Marysville has a distinct character, it's recognizable, and it's different from some of the other neighborhoods in the city of Brampton. As well, 52% weighed in to identify that they feel that severances might change the Marysville character. And this just gives you an idea of the overall summary of the feedback that's been received to date. 59% said that the zoning bylaw should not change with regards to the maximum size for a house. The current minimum lot width of 45 meters should be changed. The maximum height of a house of 10.6 should not be changed, and that the zoning should be amended to include a minimum distance between the dwellings. So some of the policy recommendations, we're recommending that the residential character area in the official plan be changed to recognize the unique characteristics of this area, that this area be identified as a residential character area, and the policies reflect a character statement for Marysfield specifically. The identification criteria for severances in Marysville, that severances be permitted only if they adhere to certain criteria like minimum lot size requirements and the residential character area policies that are to be put in place. The final recommendation is for a future culture heritage landscape study. This chart, the yellow highlight shows you the proposed differences between what's existing and what the changes are. And to better highlight these, I have a few graphics, so I'm just going to flip through the graphics instead of going through the chart. So this demonstrates what it looks like to have a minimum lot area of 0.4 hectares. And that's a 1 acre lot, which is being proposed for any new lots. Maximum lot coverage. I believe that going through the process, it was originally at 7%, and through the comments received, we've addressed that and made it a maximum 10%. So this gives you an idea of what that looks like in the context of a 1 acre lot. And that still allows accessory buildings over and above the dwelling unit. A minimum dwelling separation to to help keep the character in this area. It's 15 meters. The lines on here might be a little bit to distinguish, but this is showing you, depending on where the dwelling sits on the lot, there has to be a 15-meter separation. So you could have 6 on one side and okay, math. My mind has gone blank on the math there. 9 on the other. Maximum front yard depth. I understand that this was also a point of discussion, and what's being proposed here is 20 meters. So that's what that hatched area is showing, is that dwelling unit can range within that zone as long as it's a minimum of 20 meters from the lot line. And minimum front yard landscape. So this is where the hatched area, that's 75% that has to be permeable landscape. And driveway width. So this one is to help try and keep the character along the streetscape. So within a certain distance from the lot line, the driveway would be 6 meters, and then it can flare out if somebody wanted to have a 3-car garage towards the house. As Michelle noted, the planning department will be receiving comments, and that will be going in to finalize the report and her recommendation report. And then that's going to come back to you in late spring.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any interested persons, please come forward to provide public input on this proposal. You can sign in at the meeting delegation book over here on the side. And we will ensure that city can contact you regarding this proposal when the final staff recommendation report is presented to council. So please come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the public meeting record, and you will have 5 minutes to speak on the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've already signed in. My name is Dan O'Reilly, and I would like to speak in favor of the consultant's report. Particularly encouraging is the suggestion the city explore the potential for a future cultural heritage landscape designation for Marysfield. As a way of background, I don't live specifically in the Marysfield subdivision, but I am a lifelong resident of Wildfield who has worked very hard to preserve its history and character for more than 20 years. Wildfield is the last intact community of the former Toronto Gore Township, which was once dotted with picturesque hamlets and crossroads settlements such as Coleraine, Tullamore, and Castlemore, all of which have been absorbed by urban sprawl and their identities lost. It could be argued that Wildfield is one of the most historic communities in Ontario. It is the home of St. Patrick's Church, a designated structure, the second oldest church in the Archdiocese of Toronto, and the first named after the saint in Ontario. It was built by Father Francis McSpirit in 1894, who was considered at the time, and for many decades after his death, a miracle worker. In the 1860s, an agricultural college was established in Wildfield, and that was the forerunner of St. Patrick's School, the first Catholic school in Peel County, now Peel Region, and which still operates to this day. And the first, or one of the first housing cooperatives in Ontario was established in Wildfield, Marysfield. That gives it the distinction and status of being an historic community within a historic community. And I think the consultants have recognized that fact. In the early 1950s, 14 young couples, mostly from Toronto, formed the Family Home Builders Cooperative, which purchased approximately 200 acres of land from the St. Patrick's Church farm to build their houses and to establish a subdivision. One of those couples was Carl and Mary Finley, who would remain living there for the rest of their lives. It was only last year, following Mr. Finley's death, that the house which he built with his own hands was sold. A few years ago, I interviewed Mr. Finley about the creation of the subdivision. What he told me has a direct bearing on the City of Brampton's ultimate decision on this report. The houses that those young couples built were were based on a Canada Mortgage and Housing plans, which had a number identification system. There were 7 314s, 4 411s, and 3 248s, which were the bungalows. They could pick the house plan they wanted, but not the lots. For that, they drew straws. The larger lots were on the outside of the, as the consultant has mentioned, a rosary-shaped road, and the smaller lots are in the perimeter. And that layout and configuration should be respected. And that can be achieved by implementing the consultant's recommendations. One of the consequences of allowing unrestricted lot severances to continue, and the consultant did not say no severances, would be the irrevocable loss of trees which have been planted over the decades and which has made Wildfield such a distinct and beautiful area. Drivers heading along Mayfield Road towards Wildfield probably don't even know there are houses behind those trees. Judging by some of the comments made at the previous open houses, some of the newer homeowners seem to have the impression that they have the as-of right to do anything they want with their properties. That right does not exist, and the rights of private property owners has to be balanced with the obligation a municipality has to ensure that the character and context of homes, especially older neighborhoods, is preserved. At one of the open houses, there were suggestions that Marysfield is run down because of the small size of some of the houses. That is an outrageous falsehood. There is nothing wrong with a person or family living in a modest 1,200 to 1,500 square foot home. Thousands of Canadians have raised those type of homes, and they were much more environmentally sustainable to build and maintain than the monster mansions now creeping across the Greater Toronto area. One person even went so far to say that if the original homeowners of Marysfield wanted to preserve their history, they shouldn't have sold their homes. My rebuttal to that rather outrageous, nonsensical statement is that things change in life. People grow old. Their children grow up and move away. They have to move into senior citizens' homes. They die. But history doesn't die. Of course, it can be erased, and the history of Marysfield will be erased if you don't endorse the consultant's report. Am I running out of time?
Yes, we got, I'll give you 15 more seconds, please.
Okay. Well, there's not more to say, but I would say I'll wrap it up then that, Mr. Chairman, less than a 10-minute walk from these chambers is the historic and beautifully restored Alderley House, which the city of Brampton had the foresight to preserve a few years ago. If you hadn't done that, it would have been demolished by a developer. Please exercise the same foresight when considering the history of Marysfield.
And thank you very much. And just a reminder for everyone who is delegating or does not want to talk today, you can send your comments to staff. So I would encourage, if you didn't get a chance to say everything you wanted to, send in your comments.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've already sent a report.
Okay,
to
that's,
planning.
thank you very
Thank
much. Is there anyone else? Oh, please come forward. State your name and address for public meeting.
Good evening, council member, staff. My name is Peter Vazikas of Empire Design Company, here representing my client for the property of 20 Marysfield Road. I tend to agree somewhat with the recommendations of SGL, considering that the proposal that I have prepared for my client at 20 Marysfield falls all within the regulations and recommendations of SGL and the current zoning bylaw. We have all the setbacks, we have the coverage, we have the height, all within the limitations. We have the driveway width, all within the limitations. And the only thing I believe is our coverage could be at maybe 10 to 12% maximum. I feel that this particular project that we're proposing should be exempt from the interim control bylaw so we can proceed for building permit. We've been waiting close to over 1 year to apply, and we've been held back because of the interim control bylaw. My designs fall all within the regulations of SGL and the current zoning bylaw. I feel we should proceed. We have all the trees. We're not removing any trees except for the footprint that's required for the building. The setbacks are 8.83 on the one side, 7.5 on the other side, so we have enough distance from the adjacent buildings, never mind the property lines. The house next door to us, I don't know how it got a building permit, but it should be designed for the state of California. It's an ultra-modern home. And our house is designed to meet the characteristics of the Marysfield estate. for its design. And I have some photos here, some prints that I provided of what I'm proposing. And I think it fits all within the guidelines of SGL and the current zoning bylaw. And I don't feel that we should be held up until this decision gets made. I think we should proceed for building permit.
Okay.
And I can leave these with you if you'd like. I have the existing survey, site plan, I have the proposed, and I have a front elevation.
So I guess to the city clerk, is this an item that can be referred to by council to staff?
I've been dealing back and forth with Matt Ray as well as Michelle. Thank you, Michelle.
Through you, Mr. Chair, tonight's meeting is a statutory public meeting.
Okay.
So the item that the gentleman's bringing up can be brought in to staff and dealt with at an appropriate time. It's not on tonight's agenda.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
Sure, we'll be in contact with staff. Is there anyone else? Yes. Please come forward.
Hello all. My name is Vinod Mesh, and my family actually owns around 2 properties on Marysville Drive. So I'd say out of the total 25 odd, so I own around 10% of the place. We have a 10% stake in there. So right now the issue at the hand is this character assessment study of our neighborhood, and we have objections to where this study was being done. Consider it's taken them more than a year to do this study. And instead of looking at a progressive, growth-oriented view, it's been structured towards a regressive ghettoization of the neighborhood. The methodology used for all statistics for feedback was based on random folks versus actual residents, homeowners of the neighborhood. There are many derelict homes, which has been identified by the consultants as cottages. One of them is one which I own. I know it's an actual derelict home. Also, they have not deliberately included the 2 new eco-friendly advanced homes in the neighborhood. So one of the homes which people are talking about should be California. It's designed by an award-winning architect out of Mississauga, David Small, and you can find a ton of those homes in Mississauga. So somebody should just check it up rather than, king the statements that, it's a California home. Also, a lot of the previous owners have selectively either severed their properties or added additions, making it into an eclectic neighborhood. So coming back and saying that, we can do it, but others cannot do it. Or, we would be okay with my property being severed or me getting a smaller driveway, but the others should not. That's kind of an unfair approach. So our request is to reduce the onerous conditions suggested by the consultants and make it fair, like including the max 10% house footprint, the max frontage of 150 feet, the max depth of 65 feet. Never seen that anywhere. You have that. Also strongly resist any kind of heritage association recognition for the property. Everybody suggested that this was built in 1950s by some homeowners, and while we agree that corporation got dissolved after 2 years, so really nothing of heritage really exists out there. So not sure what we are really associating in terms of that. So in light of the time constraint, I know we've got 5 minutes here. I don't want to go over. A lot of my neighbors and residents who oppose this are here to speak, so I want to ensure that they get the fair amount of time. So I'll be providing a written detailed assessment and information to the city staff and the consultants about my concerns and our concerns. But thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Yes. Please come forward, state your name and address.
Marcello Stellato, 62 Marysfield. I have a question. Did something change because it said on the paper 150-foot frontage and then it went to 1 acre minimum?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, since the last public open house meeting that was held on December 5th, there were 3 changes. I believe that Ms. J pointed those out in her presentation. One was to the minimum lot width. Oh, sorry, not lot width. To building coverage, we originally had 7%, and now we are proposing 10%. The other change was to the maximum front yard depth. I believe we originally had 15. We now changed that to 20 meters. And we made some changes to the driveway width. We were limiting it to 9.1 meters, with it flaring down to the street, I believe, at 6 meters. And now we've introduced a maximum of 6 meters in width from the street edge heading into about 10 meters. And then the regular driveway width provisions that apply to this area are the are controlled by the minimum landscaped open space area. So to answer your question, there have been no changes to
No, the
the
width.
minimum lot width. At the last open house, we did introduce the 45 meter, which is the current zoning requirement that is there today. There have been no changes to that.
So 45 meters, that's, what, 150 feet, 130 feet?
I don't have the conversion in front of me, I
Yes,
apologize.
if you can address your remarks through the chair.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What's 45 meters in feet? Because everything there is in feet.
100 feet.
Like you got 200-foot frontage, you got 190-foot frontage, you don't have 45 meters, you don't have metric in this property. So that's what I want to know is what's the minimum frontage that's going to be allowed in this proposal?
150. Through you, Mr. Chair, it's about 150 feet.
Okay, so to sever any lots that you're saying, oh, you can't, you know, severances are allowed, there is no lots that have a 300-foot frontage on that street. So how would you sever any of the lots? That's my question.
Okay.
So what you're basically doing right now is saying, oh yeah, you can sever, but nobody on that street has a 300-foot frontage. Nobody. So how are you going to sever? So what you guys are doing is basically setting this up so you can't sever and you can't change nothing on that street. The street is a whatever you're saying, like a rosary. Nobody's changing the street. We're just changing stuff on the properties. If you want to add trees when somebody goes to put a building permit. Put 10 trees on for every house, if that's the, you know, the thing with the trees. Okay, but the lot frontages have to make sense with if somebody wants to sever a lot. Now, if you're saying it's 150 foot for a severance, there's nobody on that street that could sever a lot. Nobody.
So I think staff want to comment.
Oh, through you, Mr. Chairman, based on the draft recommendations that are before tonight for statutory public meeting, we believe that there's one, potentially two lots that could meet the minimum 45 meter lot width requirement that we are proposing.
Which two lots? There is not one.
Yes.
That is not true. That is not true. No, no.
That's not what we're here for here today.
You guys are trying to set up a meeting for us. I live on the street. I know.
Point
Right.
of order.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, we're not here for debate.
I'm not here for a debate. I wanted some
Mr. Chair.
clear
Mr. Chair.
clarification.
So I think the resident, point taken, Counselor, thank you.
I haven't
Okay,
given my
go,
point
please.
yet.
So if you could just allow the counselor to, yes.
Sir, we really want to hear your comments, but we just want to hear your comments. I don't want the back and forth between members of the public and staff. That's not, I think, what we're here for. We just want to hear your comments. Staff want to take your comments into account when they write the report and put that recommendation forward to council.
Well, then, what
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
You guys are rigging this so that people cannot sever their lots because your minimum lot frontage is not realistic according to what's on that street,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Yep. Please come forward, state your name, please. Yeah.
My name is Jagrup, and I own two lots there. One is an empty lot that I bought 3 years ago, and other one is just near to be demolished because we can't live. So I'm paying my property tax from 3 years, and the study has not been completed from last 2.5 years or whatever time is. So is there any property tax exemption for people like me? Because it's been taking forever.
Okay. So that, your question, I believe staff will make note of it and,
Because I can't even go in the city and put the application, they say it's on hold. And
Yes.
literally I'm paying and nobody can live there.
okay. So, and you signed into the delegation book?
I did.
Okay, so staff will ensure to follow up in terms of what you brought up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone else? Please come forward. State your name and address, please.
Maria Stellato, I'm at 28 Marysfield Drive. Good evening, everyone. I just want to say that I can appreciate everyone that lives outside of the actual street that we're talking about, and I can appreciate that people want to keep the quaintness that is the street. However, realistically, I mean, things change, everything grows. I don't think any changes that have been on the street, I've been on the street since I was 10, and I don't think any existing changes that are there today have implemented or changed in a negative way the characterization of the street. You know, I keep hearing this reference to a California home. I actually think it's quite nice in terms of just giving added value and bringing something a little bit different. I can appreciate that people want to keep the quaintness, but I mean, that's fine. To make this a heritage street, I think would be a big mistake. A lot of people, there's the gentleman that we just heard of, that house has been vacant for 2 years, so what are you doing with a heritage street if you keep everything there that's not livable? There's more than one house on that street that isn't livable at all today. And my house was built in the 50s, so if I can't update it in any way or sever my lot to make that house look better, I'm not helping anything for myself or any of the other neighbors. Trees, I can appreciate that, but on my side of the street anyway, all the trees are on the outsides of the lots. There is no trees in the middle at all, and I have 2 major trees that are situated directly in front of my house today, so those would stay. And like the other gentleman said, just make it a minimum that when you build a house, you have to plant X amount of trees to keep that running. You know, that's pretty much all I have to say, but this definitely needs to speed up the process somehow. I don't know how that would work, but having this go on now for 2 years is not only financially draining for all of us that are trying to get this through or trying to make this work. It's just, this is taking way too long.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Hi, my name is Simran. I'm from 56 Marysfield. We do not agree with the recommendations. The building size should not be limited to 7 to 10%. It should be standard with the rest of the city at 15%. There is no heritage characteristics left in the place. Many new residents have moved in, and they should have a reasonable liberty to build their new home. Limiting the residents to landscaping restrictions, building restrictions, site-specific cultural zoning will negatively affect us all as homeowners. We are in the process of our home being developed, but we have met with a lot of blockades over the years due to red tape at the City Hall, which has delayed our home and has cost us a lot of money. Like the other gentleman said, property taxes for no reason. When new homeowners bought their home in this neighborhood, we did not consider the apparent heritage associated with the site. If current homeowners don't recognize this, why should the new owners do that? So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bernie Cheskia, 8 Delray Court. I actually live within the 240 meters, so I don't live on Marysfield, but I'd like to give my opinion. First of all, I do have a question. Whatever is passed here, will it be able to be overridden by the OMB?
So just a
When it
reminder-
does get passed?
No, just a reminder, there's nothing passed today.
No.
Maybe if staff just want to remind the gentleman the steps that were taken. I think there was the graph that we put on regarding the timelines. So we might just, or staff can just simply answer, please.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't care about time. I just want to know, once it does get passed, will somebody be able to go to the OMB and get it changed?
You have every opportunity, once a decision's been made
Yeah.
by this council, there's always as a recourse, an opportunity to go to the OMB or LPAT, I believe currently, and do what you would like.
So it isn't like a real heritage thing then, where once you change it to like a heritage site that,
Sorry?
you can't, so there, you still have the option to go to the OMB once,
Yeah, I
once it
believe you
becomes
have,
passed?
as Councillor Palashi pointed out, I believe you have 21 days to, after file an application at the LPAT.
Okay.
and staff can maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
Okay. And my other question is, when stuff does go to the OMB, they don't have the same rules of contact that people within 240 meters are contacted? Is that true? Because when there was other severances in the area, we weren't, the neighborhood wasn't contacted when it went to the OMB.
Well, again, I don't know if staff's in a position to provide any comment, as that's an independent body, but certainly through the LPAT application process, that criteria will be established. So I don't think that we'd want to comment on terms of being a party or what those would be.
Okay, I wasn't asking, I was asking for clarification as to
Well,
whether
again,
they,
it's, and I appreciate it, but the clarification wouldn't be through City Hall.
Oh, okay.
It would be, as it's an independent body,
Okay.
they'd be able to give you that clarification.
Okay.
Okay, our city clerk has some information.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think just there may be some confusion that the delegate's speaking about. When an application for a severance is provided, there are specific requirements for giving notice of that particular application. What we're here tonight to talk about is an official plan amendment, and that is a wider notice
Okay.
area. And anybody that does participate in this process, including tonight's statutory public meeting, that's why we take your information for the record, because then you now have appeal rights to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, which used to be called the Ontario Municipal Board, if an appeal is filed after council makes a decision on this official plan amendment.
Okay. So for my comments, I fully support the first speaker. I couldn't have said it better myself. The area does have a lot of character, and I've lived there for close to 30 years now, and my family has used that to walk around every morning or in the evening. It's a beautiful neighborhood, and the more we can do to keep it that way, the better it is. And there is, if you look at the pictures that the consultant has provided, there is people there who have increased the size of their house and made it look like it belongs there. So I realize there's houses there that are 800, 900, or 1,000 square feet, but there's other people who have taken that house, expanded it, and still made it look like it belongs in the neighborhood. And I would suggest that you don't provide any severances or allow any exemptions until you make your final decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Yes,
I'm not a good speaker, but
that's okay.
I've been living in.
If you can state your name again?
My name is Sean Giblin. Same initials as that SGL. I kind of like the work they've done, and some of my neighbors who've spoken against the proposal. It's the first time I've seen them tonight. I try to know all. I walk my dog, and I try to. That's a neighborhood, and that's a mature neighborhood, and the two severances that one that happened on the west side of the subdivision, and one that happened on the northern corner. I mean, they're big houses. I mean, if you want to, if you want a big monster home, the rest of Brampton is good for you. But that's those are a done deal. Even though I tried to get to your meeting for of adjustment, and I work early in the morning, and by the time I got there at noon, they said, well, it's already been done, but it said it got put over to the, it's got put over. And I gave all my information, never got a call back. So I welcome new neighbors, and but what I don't welcome is people that they just want to split and flip, in investors, and that's
Okay.
and have a good night.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it. And you've left your information with staff, so staff will be able to follow up. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, at this point, oh, yep, please come forward.
My name is Harvinder Thakur, and I'm here on behalf of my brother, 52 Marysfield Drive. And I'm not agree with the city's decision. And if you're, nobody have 150 feet lot in there, but like, you know, it's already been few lots when already house been built, and then I don't know how it's like, you know, whatever they're saying. If you want to put a trees, I may agree with every single other person. If you guys can put more trees, when you guys give a permit to somebody to build a house, put a 5 or 10 trees, whatever you guys want. That's, but I'm not agree with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I go to our members of committee now. Do you have any questions of staff for clarification regarding this proposal? Councillor Palashi. Oh, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we're still at the public process, so I don't want to interfere in the making of this report, and I look forward to it coming back with public's comments for us to make a decision. My one question that I do have is, there was talk about making this possibly a heritage district, and I guess I'm not fully understanding what that would look like, if it would look anything like the way Churchville is now. Is there a possibility that it could have kind of the same designation? Could anybody?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Palashi. At this time, we're just making a policy recommendation to look at potentially a future study. We would have the scope of the study didn't include a heritage aspect to it, so we would have to undertake a cultural heritage assessment, and that would look at perhaps individual properties or the landscape qualities. One example I may draw upon, which may end up being like this, is Credit View Road, which is designated as a cultural heritage landscape, but purely just the road is designated.
Right.
In that instance.
And there's other areas in Churchville, like Hallstone and Credit View. It has, like, the roads have that designation, and then some of the houses do not. But so that's something that maybe in the future report, when it comes back, would there be kind of a comparison to that aspect of it? Not necessarily the homes, because I don't know if the homes have that need for designation. Sorry, Michelle.
No, through you, Chair, to respond. We probably won't have any, like, we haven't consulted or engaged a consultant at this time to complete that cultural heritage landscape study. I don't have any heritage staff at this time to answer how long that process would take. So we are eager, and you can tell by the comments we've received tonight, to bring a conclusion to this study. So I don't believe we will have a direct answer in terms of what may be a recommendation in there to designate. So that's why we're introducing it as a policy recommendation, and for it to be a future study at this time. So the recommendation report that we bring forward to you is simply just a recommendation that we study it further, but we won't have specific recommendations with respect to that at that time.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
And then the recommendation report that comes back to council with comments from the public, roughly how long are we looking at for this to come back to council for us to make a decision?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we are hoping to bring it back in spring, so I'm thinking hopefully May to June. We do have an upcoming LPAT hearing with respect to the ICBL that's taking place in June. So we would like to be in a position to have council's position on the implementing documents prior to that hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As there are no further questions, can I get a mover to receive staff report? Councillor Fortini, all in favor? Carried. The statutory public meeting for this item is now adjourned. Thank you. So we move on now to new business. Councillor Palashi, item 9.1. Maybe we'll just want to wait a couple of minutes, allow folks to.
Mr. Chair, to be very brief, I don't expect a response.
Okay.
Just wait till my mic.
Yeah, I think we want to give it a couple of minutes, just allow people to. I would just remind those in the audience, feel free, please, as we have to continue with our meeting, you can continue your discussions outside. Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the agenda, the last agenda, the next meeting being canceled, I'd like staff to come back with something to members of council, justification as to why we're looking at agendas that are like this. You know, we budget according to our DCs and what we expect to come through. And as of the agendas that I've seen over the last 6 months and cancellations coming up, it's hard done by if we're looking at maybe possibly 3,000 units according to the last 3 years of DCs that we think we're going to get and budgeting accordingly. I'm not seeing that, so maybe if planning staff can consult with finance and possibly come back to a future council meeting to give us some kind of understanding of what this is, what's happening here, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Palashi. As we see no further items, then we go to Councillor question period. Are there any questions by? Nope. Any members of the public have any questions, please come forward. At this time, no. So I guess now we go to, can I get a motion for adjournment? As a reminder, our next meeting will be March 4th at 7 p.m. At 7 p.m. Can I, motion by Councillor Williams to adjourn, all in favor? Carried, thank you, and have a good evening.